Greetings, everybody. Welcome to our Go With Your Gut workshop, Digestion Issues. That's our focus. Hey, Lucia. And then there's an iPad 4. I don't know who it is, but welcome. We're going to get rolling here. And so I want to just start today by just acknowledging you for all showing up, because we know action is the key here. And so first you have to learn, and then you need to act. And so I want you to know that we're going to be going over lots of different digestion issues tonight. And we're not just going to go over the same old. And in fact, there actually is a lag between what the latest scientific evidence shows us and what the conventional approaches are to things. So we're going to be going right to the leading edge there. We're going to be geeking out a bit here. So stay focused so you can get everything out of this that you want to. And I want to start by just telling you the story of a woman who came to see me, and she had terrible issues with her gut. And she had a lot of gassiness and burping and flatulence, and it was really interfering with her life. And she was an athlete. And so for her, it was not only interfering with just regular life, but interfering with her performance as well. And on top of that, she was a teacher. And for her, you know, a lot of people with digestive problems, they don't really like to talk about these things. You know, it's embarrassing. And for her, the worst thing about it was the odors that she was emitting that she couldn't control. So you can imagine how that really tanks your quality of life when that's just happening and it's beyond your control. So she got onto care, and we did a thorough analysis with her. We figured out exactly what was going on, what was causing it, and we put together a plan for her, a path for her to follow. She followed the plan, and within a few weeks, she was already noticing a difference. And within a few months, things had resolved, and she had SIBO and IBS and all kinds of things, you know, diagnoses. But we just went to, what does your body need? How do we need to build health here? And we got everything working again. And that was a dramatic change to her entire quality of life, as you can imagine. And not only did she notice that her digestive system improved, but her energy levels improved. And as an athlete, that's a really big deal when you're feeling your energy ramp up to another level as well. So it's a big deal what happens for folks that struggle with all kinds of digestive issues. And it really does run the gamut. There's a lot to go over here. So we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to share my PowerPoint with you so that you can see some of my visuals, because they really do work well. I was really inspired by a colleague of mine who became a chiropractor because he had such terrible digestive issues that actually improved. And he was one of those cases where they were literally ready to remove part of his colon. It was like that severe. And he had tried everything, and he was just about to get married, and they told him, yeah, well, once we remove your part of your colon, you probably are not going to be able to have kids. And he's like, oh my gosh, my life has just gone completely the wrong way. And so someone said, you know, you haven't tried a chiropractor yet? And he's like, all right. And he goes to a chiropractor, and long story short, it took some time, but he started to actually repair his gut. So he was able to avoid surgery. He had a happy marriage. He's got kids. And he was so inspired that he then went and became a chiropractor. And he was also an athlete too. He was Mr. America. That level of athlete, like literally won the title Mr. America. Yeah. And even someone as fit as that, you would think, you know, oh, they must be healthy. But no, he was suffering. And finally, chiropractic was the only thing that helped him. So, you know, whether it's a big issue or a small issue, digestive problems affect our lives. And even before we think of this idea of digestive issues, let's just put it all into context, because the digestive issues are just part of a bigger healthcare crisis that we have, where people's health is going sideways, and digestive problems are part of that problem. And so when we look at the reasons why we have the healthcare crisis, it's really about people not being able to take responsibility for their for their actions because they either don't know or they're too busy or whatever the reasons are. It's too easy to just not have to make the changes. So there's all kinds of reasons why that is. Secondly, they have the wrong definition of health. They're using how they feel as the level of monitoring their health. So if they feel good one day, I'm healthy today. And then, oh yeah, yesterday was a bad day. Yeah, it's tons of digestive problems, but today I'm healthy again. And they kind of think of it that way. So they kind of can live around things. If they avoid certain things, and they feel good, right? So avoiding things, living around it doesn't mean that it's actually healthy. So we want to actually use some new premises, some new definitions about it. And I'm going to throw some stats your way because the stats are important. For example, right now, 70 million Americans have digestive problems. That actually comes out to 1 in 5. So think of, if 10 people, 2 of them are suffering from digestive problems. Maybe it's friends, maybe it's family members, maybe it's coworkers or neighbors, or maybe it's you. Maybe you're part of that statistic too. So I share this with you because I don't want your eyes to glaze over when we go to stats, because those stats come from people that we know, you and I, and it's affecting people's lives. So I hope everything that you learned tonight, that not only will it help you, but also that you may be able to help other people that are struggling as well. So remember that this is a part of a series that we do, the Body Signals series. Every month we have a different topic. Next month, we're going to be covering how to master stress during the holidays. We know we're coming into the most stressful time of the year, on top of the most stressful 2 or 3 years that we've ever had, right? So things just ramp up at this time of year. So if you can get the digestion piece right going into this holiday season, actually you're halfway there. It's a very important part of why people's health tanks this time of the year. So the things that we're going to cover tonight are from the gamut. We're going to go with things like acid reflux, GERD, heartburn, that kind of thing, all the way down to constipation and everything in between: irritable bowel syndrome, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, even celiac. We're going to cover all these things. But remember that any of these are symptoms. And symptoms typically are the tip of the iceberg. They are a sign that something bigger is going on that's hidden under the surface. And so the symptoms are not actually the problem. The symptoms are the communication from your body to let you know that there is a problem, that you need to make change. And too often in our culture, people either are given a drug to mask it so they don't have to make the changes, or the changes they make are just living around it, rather than really understanding what that communication is from the body and how do you actually go all the way upstream and find the cause of it and correct the cause so that you then can get that level of health and function back at optimal levels. So I want you to learn how to speak body. And so I spend my day listening to bodies. And so I want to share what I've learned with you, and specifically how this relates to things like digestive issues. And so the things that I'm going to cover, we have one of the largest wellness clinics in the area. So I'm going to be covering the things that I see most commonly. So it's not going to be everything, and it's not going to, I want to give you walk around knowledge with this so that you can, understand your own body signals. And then also, perhaps you can even help others by understanding what their bodies may be telling them as well. All right. So when you don't understand that symptoms versus the cause, so remember we said symptoms are not the problem, it's the cause that we need to figure out. That's the important part. And once you understand that, and as well as symptoms versus the problem. So the problem is your life's going sideways, right? However way it's affecting you, you're having to live around it. You're concerned about, well, how is this going to affect my future health? You've seen problems in the past, and it's interfering with your social life, your family life, your work life, however it's showing up for you. The problem is how it's affecting your life. The cause of the problem is not the symptoms, it's going further upstream. So with symptoms like such as digestive issues that seem to be the problem, the goal oftentimes is just to make the symptom go away. But if your objective, if your goal is to get healthier, then that's a different outcome than just making the symptoms go away. So really asking you what your objective is the most important part here. And then once we know that your objective is to live a longer, stronger, healthier life and reduce your risk of digestive system problems and heal the ones that you do have, then we're going to be moving in the right direction. So let's put symptoms as a context here. Symptoms are, part of a continuum, really, is what we're seeing here. So I want you to look at this. This is a illness wellness continuum. So at one end, we have premature death, people that are dying earlier than they should be. At the other end, we have high levels of wellness. And then in between, we've got this range. And everybody that's here on this call with me, everybody's somewhere on this range, including me. And if you are at the point which we call the neutral point, this is where there's not necessarily symptoms, but you're also not necessarily robustly healthy. So there's the healthy zone, there's the sick zone, and then this is the not sick zone, which is also the not healthy zone. Do you see? Now, a lot of people, as I said, they feel good today, and then the next day, they start to have symptoms. Oh, not a good day. I'm sick today. But then I feel better. I'm healthy. And they're really flipping back and forth from here to here, rather than truly being at high levels of wellness. So notice that the signs are something that'll, as you're losing function, the signs are going to show up first, and then the symptoms come after that. So signs are something you can measure, but you may not feel. Symptoms are something you feel. And then if the symptoms go on long enough to the point where they're no longer correctable, that's a disability. And then the disability is leading you towards early death. Okay, so that's how this range works here. So symptoms are here to tell you what direction you're heading. They're telling you you've now reached a danger zone. You're moving away from health in a dangerous way at this point, because that's the point of the symptoms, is to get you to change the direction you're heading. So my job is to get anybody, no matter where they are here, moving towards that high level of wellness that they want. Now, some people, I have to start by just slowing down the momentum, going in the wrong direction before we can turn the corner and start moving in the right direction. And everybody's going to be moving in one direction or the other, but all at different velocities and speeds as well. So we do our assessments to get a better understanding of where people are, what direction they're heading, how fast they're heading, and what do we need to do to turn the ship around. And that all comes down to making better decisions, which leads to better choices, better behaviors. And that's how we get there. Now, there's an important piece of science that I want to share with you that a lot of people don't understand. So when you have digestive problems, that usually means, I've got a stomach ache, or I'm uncomfortable. If you've got back pain or neck pain or headaches, like where you have pain, you're feeling it. I can feel I have a digestive issue right now. Feeling it, science tells us that feeling things is actually just a small part of the nervous system's job. So feeling versus function. The sensory nerves feel things. They feel things like pain, also hot and cold. They feel where your body is in space, so your posture is controlled there with proprioception. But you have another part of your nervous system that controls all the muscles, and another part that controls all the autonomic nerves. Notice that the autonomic nerves control digestion as well. So that's an important part of the nervous system. But remember that the only part that feels pain or feels discomfort is the sensory nerves. So the sensory nerves that feel pain are only 10% of the nervous system's job. The other 90% is running that function. And so you could actually have interrupted or poor autonomic nerve supply for digestion and not necessarily feel pain. Oh, I feel pain today, but I didn't feel it yesterday. But you may have impaired autonomic nervous system function every day, whether you have the pain or not. So I want you to get that. That's so important, because if you're only counting on the pain as telling you how healthy you are, then you're going to be in trouble. All right, I'm going to stay hydrated today. All right, so sometimes people have assumptions that they make, or pardon me, they're beliefs that they have that get them into trouble. Here's what I mean. The idea that drugs work. So remember we said, if your goal is just to have the pain go away, just have the symptoms, the digestive issues, I just want them to go away. The drugs actually may work for that, but there may be some hidden dysfunction that you're not feeling that continues on, even though the drugs are working. And so it's important that if the symptom is the problem and we just want it to go away, there are many TV commercials that will tell us exactly what the solution is, what we need to do to have the best life possible. You know, those commercials I'm talking about. Here's an example of one. You recognize this guy, right? This is Larry the Cable Guy. And so this is what's happening in this commercial. Larry the Cable Guy is standing in front of the colossal corn dogs, and he's promoting Prilosec. So Prilosec is, it's for dealing with GERD or acid reflux or indigestion. And the point of this ad is trying to move you to use Prilosec in a preventative way. And so the idea is you can now take one a day over-the-counter Prilosec to prevent you from getting reflux, so you can just continue living your life in the crappy way you've been living it, basically, right? So they have this newlywed couple enjoying all that life has to offer by preventing heartburn with a drug while they continue to live their crappy lifestyle. Do you see what's happening here? And can we all agree that we need to live differently than this? Like, that's actually what the problem is, right? And just check it out. I don't know if you're as offended or insulted in your intelligence as I am by this, but I want you to just notice that the small writing on the commercial is, it's possible while taking Prilosec over the counter, use as directed for 14 days. You're only supposed to use it for 14 days. Do not take more than 14 days. And not for immediate relief either. Right? And yet the whole positioning of this ad is for you to just take it on an ongoing basis. I have so many people that come into my practice on Prilosec or omeprazole or any of these kinds of things that you're only supposed to be on a short time. And yet there they go. They're just on it for a long time. Some people for years. Now, let's say you did take this strategy, right? What are the side effects if you were to take this approach? Let's just take a look. Headache, abdominal pain. Wait a minute. Didn't I start to take it because I have abdominal pain, right? That's a side effect. Irregular heartbeat. What? Persistent muscle spasms, seizures, diarrhea. Wait, that's another digestive problem. Abdominal or stomach pain and cramping, fever, blood or mucus in your stool, rashes, itchiness, swelling, especially the face, tongue, and throat, severe dizziness, trouble breathing. Like, oh, really? Don't like the idea of the drugs? Well, what if you just tried to ignore it? How about that as an approach? Let's just try to ignore it. All right, you tell me, what happens when you ignore a problem? Does it get worse or does it get worse, right? Yeah, maybe it'll just go away. You know, I've heard that before. I'm just going to wait and see here, right? We need a better way. You have to take action. And if you're going to get better results, you have to take action. But if you're going to take action, you first have to understand what the problem is. So let's now just take a hard look here at what the cause of most stomach problems are that people struggle with today. But let's lay some ground rules first of how we're going to be thinking about this. So we need a better way to think about it. First, let's start with the premise that healthy is normal. Unhealthy is abnormal. Healthy is normal. So healthy digestive system is also normal. Even though everywhere around you, like that commercial, was kind of normalizing digestive issues. You see, oh, just have a good time and just take this little pill. Yeah, I just need that. But it's normal. Everybody's got that, right? No, healthy is normal. If you're having digestive issues, that is unhealthy and that is abnormal. And the second premise, your body is smart. It was designed to be healthy. All those digestive cells in the digestive system were all designed to move towards health. So if you're not experiencing healthy digestive function, it means that something's getting in the way. And it's going to be some sort of interference. It's going to be either one of two things. Either It's going to be a toxicity or a deficiency or both. And if we can just reconcile what those are, then you get on your way to better function. So what is it that controls function in the body? The nervous system is the master system that controls all of the functions in the body, including the digestive system. And then your spine is your suit of armor. It's your lifeline between the brain and the body. So all the messages going to the digestive system, coming back again, getting to the brain, they all have to pass through the spine. And so the spinal column is the suit of armor that protects the spinal cord, so all those messages can go back and forth in a healthy way. And let's just can we all admit here that modern life is unnaturally stressful? It just is, and especially the last couple of years. And so we have to recognize that there are things that keep pummeling us, that keep stressing us over and over again. And those stresses come at us in 3 dimensions: thoughts, toxins, and traumas. So it's not just the stressful thoughts that are the problem. There's also stressful toxins that we have to deal with, and stressful traumas, both micro and macro. And when we have stress, it leads to a stress response. So what is a stress response? It's when we have this adaptive physiology, meaning that our body changes how it is running itself based on the stresses that it's exposed to. So if we are exposed to a stress, we're going to expect to see our blood pressure go up, our heart rate go up, because this is the way we're going to win against a tiger if we have to fight a tiger. So blood pressure and heart rate go up so we can get blood out to the muscles so that we can power up and we can fight or run as fast as possible. So our muscle tone is going to go up too, so we're ready. Our cholesterol is going to go up as well. Now, this is interesting because cholesterol is essential for making stress hormones. So if we're going to keep our blood pressure and heart rate up and keep things revved, we better have cholesterol to make those hormones. And we also use cholesterol for wound repair. So if we do get cut by the tiger, clawed by the tiger, we're going to be able to repair that wound fast. That's the same reason that our clotting factors will go up when we're in stress mode. And fear and anxiety are going to ramp up because that keeps us hyper-focused, hyper-vigilant, and looking for where that tiger is. Our insulin sensitivity is going to be down-regulated because we actually do want to have blood sugar high because we're going to use that sugar for fighting the tiger. So we want it in the blood so we can distribute it to the muscles. So insulin is going to down-regulate so we don't, the purpose of insulin is if our blood sugar goes up to get it out of the blood and into storage. So insulin is our fat storage hormone. But in this case, we're going to down-regulate that so we have higher blood sugar so we can use it. Now, our immune system is also going to be down-regulated because the immune system, although it's important if we do get wounded, it's a very expensive system to run. So we actually want to down-regulate it while we're fighting the tiger. During that time, we just need to survive the next minute. But as soon as that minute is over, then the immune system can ramp back up again. And especially if we did get wounds, now it's time to turn that immune system on in order to help heal those wounds. Our sex drive is going to be down-regulated. Not a good time to make babies if a tiger is chasing you. We're going to have decreased serotonin, which is going to affect our sleep cycles. They're going to be interrupted. And digestion is going to, first it's going to speed way up and empty. So we might get vomiting or we might get diarrhea. Like if the tiger's chasing you, holy smokes, you're going to crap your pants, right? Yeah, that's that digestive system fast, right? But then that digestive system is going to slow way down because what you're trying to do right now is trying not to be lunch. So it's not a good time to sit down and eat lunch, right? So again, digestive system is just going to be using up energy that we need to be using out in the muscles. And we don't want that blood flow to be in the gut. So you can see that when we are stressed, it's going to affect our digestive system. It's going to slow down and stop digestion. And this is a perfect response. It's going to allow us to adapt to that acute stressor when it shows up, survive the next minute. It's just not a good long-term strategy. So this adaptive physiology is going to get us into trouble if it's prolonged and sustained. So, I mean, we all know that our mind affects our stomach, right? And so we can see how it does this right here. And so when it's chronic, that's when we actually get into trouble. All right. So let's now check it out here, this autonomic nervous system. We're going to geek out a bit here because the acute stressor is the perfect scenario for slowing down and stopping digestion, but it's deadly if it's experienced as a chronic stress. When we look at the autonomic nervous system, we have two parts to it. So we've, nervous system 101 is brain controls the body, body reports to the brain, and that's nervous system 101. We need a complete cycle. Nervous system 102 or 202 is all about looking at the two parts of the autonomic nervous system when it comes to digestion. So we have the parasympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system, which is in charge of rest, repair, digestion, reproduction. So this is when we're in safety mode and healing mode. The sympathetic part of the autonomic nervous system is for fight or flight. And so you can see that these are the opposite. So please recognize, just like in your car, where you have different gears, you have forward, drive, forward, and then you have reverse. You can't be in both at the same time. You're going to choose one or the other. The same thing is true for the autonomic nervous system. You have to choose one or the other for running the organs. And it can change in a moment. Like suddenly there's the tiger and suddenly you're in sympathetic. And then the tiger's gone. Now you're in parasympathetic. And you want to have a balance there. The stress hormones are what create this adaptive physiology. And so when we are in sympathetic dominance, that's when the stress hormones are flooding the body. So let me just show you a little bit more detail here. We have in our autonomic nervous system, the brain sends messages right down to the top of the brainstem, the top of the spinal cord. And there's something called the vagus nerve that comes right out there. And the vagus nerve goes all the way down to all of the organs, right down to the large intestine. And then at the very bottom of the spine, the brain would send messages all the way down to the bottom of the spine. And we have nerves that come out that come up and cover all the rest of the intestines, bladder, reproductive organs, and so on. So this blue part of the nervous system, this is the parasympathetic part of the nervous system. So this is what's going to run all the organs when you're resting or sleeping or you're in safety mode. Sympathetic is all the yellow that you see here. So sympathetic nervous system also is controlling the organs. As you can see, all those organs are being innervated. And this is the fight or flight part of the nervous system. So it's almost like a yin-yang control of the organ systems. Brain is controlling everything, but it's choosing which part of the autonomic nervous system it's going to fire depending on how it is perceiving the stresses that you're exposed to. So the intelligence that's in every single cell is going to course all across your nervous system, but that intelligence is going to be applied in a coordinated way depending on what the brain is perceiving. So when we look at nerve supply, I like to think of it like a fuse box of where these, just like there's certain wires that go to certain rooms in the house, those wires or nerves go to certain organ systems, depending on what part of the spine they're exiting from. And so the intelligence that runs your body, keeps you healthy and heals your body, it courses across the nervous system. And that's the conduit or the electrical system that is used. So the brain can talk to the body and the body can talk to the brain. And when it's coordinated and every cell and system is being controlled and coordinated, that's what it means to be healthy and healing, in healthy and healing mode. And so, if you were to, Lucia, if you came home tonight and suddenly you found that one whole room of your house, none of the lights were working, none of the appliances were working, you wouldn't spend a minute trying to check that one light bulb, right? You go right down to the power box, right? And see what circuit has blown here. And that's what chiropractors do. When you come in to see a chiropractor and they hear what your concerns are, they're already thinking, all right, where's that blown circuit in there? We got to check the spine and see if there's anything interfering with the control of that organ system. And so the spine is designed to last a lifetime as long as we take care of it. But if we don't take care of it, that's when we get into trouble. So let me just show you what I mean by that. And I'm going to just pause the screen share so you can get a closer look here. All right, so You may want to change your screen so that it's on speaker view so that I'm the biggest one on the screen here. When you look at the spine, right, you're looking at it from the front. It's got these 24 movable bones, all separated by the discs in between the bones. The purpose of the disc is to be the spacer to make sure that the hole is the right size for that nerve to come through, so the nerve has room to breathe to carry the messages back and forth between the organs and the body and up to the brain. So it goes back and forth like that. So if we have any kind of a misalignment of the vertebrae, that could start to interfere with the flow of messages from the body up to the brain and back again. So let's say that that nerve is the nerve supply to the pancreas. Well, the pancreas may not be getting accurate signaling. So the pancreas is waiting for the signal from the brain to tell it what to do. The pancreas has jobs that it can do. It's all about digestive system, digestive enzymes, insulin, and so on. It's waiting for the signal from the brain to tell it what to do and how much and when. So if there's clear information going back and forth, the brain sends a message, be a good pancreas, and it goes right down, be a good pancreas, comes out through the nerve, goes to the pancreas, be a good pancreas, and the pancreas hears, be a pancreas, okay, I know what to do right now, and it does it. And then it sends feedback back up to the brain, and the brain's getting the feedback from everywhere else about how things are going, right? Now, if there is disturbance, the brain sends a message, and by the time it comes through the disturbance, by the time the pancreas hears it, the pancreas is hearing, be a good what? I didn't catch that. What do I do? And so the pancreas is going to do something, but it may not be exactly what's needed for the rest of the body to be healthy. And so over time, we're going to see digestive issues start to show up and so on. So that's kind of how this works. So that digestive issues may have started from misalignment of the vertebrae, or subluxation, we call that, putting pressure on the nerve. So that is what the big idea is. Here, let me just bring my screen share back again. Right? So the big idea is that the messages have to get from the brain to the body and back again without interference, then you get to be healthy. But if there's any disturbance, interference, remember we said toxicities or deficiencies. So you can have toxic irritated nerves signaling an organ where it's just keeping it in stress mode, or you could have deficiencies where it's not getting enough nerve supply. The signal is sluggish or it's too vague. Toxicities or deficiencies in nerve supply are also going to cause interference, which is going to cause a breaking down of function. And so if we can correct that interference, reconcile the toxicities and deficiencies, get the nervous system healthier, which means getting the spine healthier, then that's when we're going to see function improve again. All right. So again, just looking into the subluxation idea here, you're going to have joint misalignment. The joint misalignment is going to then create this soft tissue damage, perhaps damaging the disc, perhaps damaging the nerves, the soft tissue, it could damage the tendons, the ligaments in this area, right? And so the soft tissue damage is then what leads to inflammation, and that inflammation again contributes to more and more nerve irritation. When the nerve gets irritated, your smart body is going to take the muscles in this area and say, hey, we just need to stop irritating that nerve. So the muscles will spasm to just lock down, strap down that joint so it stops moving. When it stops moving, we get a loss of what's called imbibition. Imbibition is the way that discs can get nutrients in and toxins out. So a disc does not have a good blood supply. So the way that it gets things in and out is like a sponge. If you squeeze a sponge, the water comes out. When you release it, the water can suck back in again. So the disc gets toxins out from movement of the spine, and it gets nutrients sucked in through movements of the spine. And so when we have the muscle spasming happening, the disc no longer is getting movement. So we lose that imbibition, which over time can cause a breaking down of function in that disc where it starts to deteriorate and decay. The other thing that happens is with joint fixation, where it's fixated, it's not moving, the brain is no longer getting signaling from those joints saying that everything's okay. The brain is used to, and it depends on that whole cycle of it sends a message out and it gets feedback. Part of the feedback it gets is from mechanoreceptors in the joint, which means when the joints move, the signal that it's moving goes up to the brain, and the brain gets that message. Okay, I know what's going on down there. I know where that body is in space because I can see or sense where the joints are. But when we have joint fixation and the joint's no longer moving, the brain no longer gets a signal. And so the brain now starts to get worried, like, what is going on down there? I'm not getting any signaling. And then the brain will go into a stress response because it's not getting the signaling. So Lucia, if you were to go to the county fair, right? Go to the Champlain Valley Fairgrounds with your two girls, and it's all crowded, and suddenly, is it Luna? Is Luna your other daughter? Yeah. Suddenly, you lose Luna's hand, and you're looking around like, where is she? Right? You go into stress mode, like, where is she? That's what happens to the brain when it stops getting the signaling and it loses track of what is happening in the body because of the subluxations. So literally the brain will flood the body with stress hormones when we're subluxated. So remember that the stresses that put us into stress mode can be coming from our thoughts that are stressful. It can be coming from chemical stresses that we're exposed to. It can be coming from poor posture. And it can also be coming from the subluxations that are uncorrected, that can just be triggering that stress hormones to keep flooding the body. So even if you think you don't have stresses right now, you may have, or that you're managing the stresses that you have right now, you may have subluxations itself that are causing stress to your system. So how would you know, how would you measure whether or not the stresses that you are exposed to or that you have been exposed to have caused subluxations? Remember that there's ways that we can measure what's happening with stress. So we use technology to do that. We literally have ways to measure that. So this is the heart rate variability scanning that we do in the office. So what this tells us is, here's the bullseye where we want to see people land. Here's the white dot. That's this person's measurement. And so this tells us that they don't have as much robustness or power or adaptability with the current stresses that they're under, that their current stresses are overloading them. That's what this tells us. So if they were up in the bullseye, it tells us, yep, whatever stresses are going on, they're totally managing them. In fact, they're probably getting stronger from them. But when they don't have enough capacity, those same stresses will start to affect their health. What we also see here is this person is sympathetic dominant. So down the bottom here, it's kind of tiny. I don't know if you can see it, but this side is parasympathetic, runs the organs when you're sleeping or resting. This is the parasympathetic side. So this is the part that is running the organs when you're active or stressed. This is fight or flight mode. So this person not only doesn't have enough robustness to manage their current stresses, but they're locked into sympathetic dominance. So they are in stress mode, even though they're just sitting in a room, nothing's going on. They don't have any stresses in the room with them, but their brain is just defaulting to sympathetic dominant stress mode. So that's going to interfere with the healing response globally overall. Now, we also can do a very specific assessment of the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and we can see exactly where there is irritation in the nervous system that could be interfering with the flow of messages. And we can see, okay, well, C7, something's going on here. Oh, but there's a lot going on here. What is this in charge of controlling? Like, imagine you're looking at the fuse box in the basement and all of these circuits are blown, right? What rooms of the house are they in charge of controlling? Well, this part right here, C5 and C6, this is kind of nerve supply to the stomach and the gallbladder. T7, T8 is your immune system, your liver, which is a lot to do with digestions as well, digestive enzymes from the liver. The T9 and 10 is the adrenal glands, so stress response, and T10 is small intestines, controlled from here. T11, T12, small intestines, also kidneys. Now we get into the lumbar spine, and this is all L4, 5, that's in charge of the large intestines and reproductive organs, bladder, that kind of thing. Then the sacrum is also that parasympathetic that could be affecting the autonomic nervous system as well. So this is how we can do scans of the nervous system, and we can literally see, do you have compromise in the nerves that are in charge of controlling your digestive organs? If so, how are you ever going to get healthier if we don't clear that nerve interference? So what is it that causes these subluxations? It's the accumulation of stresses over time. So sure, it could be jarring the spine, like in a car accident or a sports injury, but most of the time it's more postural stresses that are going to be a bigger problem, and those can accumulate over time. And again, those accumulation of stresses, they literally can be from chemical stresses, from mental emotional stresses, or from these physical stresses. And these are all examples of the physical stresses where we have the poor posture, sniffing the monitor, screen time, all of those things. And the bad habits, they add together, and over time they accumulate. And they are what cause the subluxations to persist. Now, let's jump into all the different categories of digestive issues that I see in the office. We're going to start at the bottom of the digestive system with chronic constipation. So again, there's a continuum here. So there are people that struggle with constipation every now and then. Maybe if they, are not at home in their regular rhythm, and they, have to go out somewhere, or they have to go and stay overnight somewhere, and they're just not comfortable, and it might show it there. But we also have people that are chronically constipated on an ongoing basis. Maybe they're only moving their bowels a couple times a week, and maybe that's since childhood. I've had people that I've encountered with that. That it gets dangerous when that happens, because we're not actually getting rid of the toxins that we need to be. So there's a continuum here, and it's no matter where you are, it's not normal. Although people that have a chronic issue with this, they start to call it, oh, this is just my new normal. This is anything but normal, and it's a serious issue. So remember, an engine is only as good as its exhaust system, right? If your engine cannot get things out through the exhaust, everything's going to get backed up. The engine's not going to work. So what is happening here? This is about muscles. This is about tone. We need tone in our digestive system, in our intestinal muscles, in order to move food along. So the digestive tract is actually a very sophisticated series of involuntary smooth muscles. And so we can end up with tonal issues, just like any muscles. So nerves are what control the movement of food along the digestive tract. So we can start all the way from when we chew our food, mastication, we call it. Chewing our food is using our muscles. And then motility, swallowing, is a voluntary action when we choose to swallow. But then once we swallow, it also is coupled with an involuntary action of a reflexive action of moving that bolus of food right down the GI tract. And there are very specialized tissues that we have that move it along. And it's all controlled by what? The nervous system, right? The muscles that we chew with are controlled by the nervous system. The salivary glands are controlled by the nervous system, right? We have all of the muscles and the tone going down the spinal cord. It's all controlled by the nervous system. And so we have our parasympathetic and our sympathetic that are together controlling how that digestive system is going to be influenced. So the stomach then grinds down, it breaks down the food, the pH and the acidity of the system, and the digestive system, the digestive enzymes. What is it that controls all of that? The nervous system, right? The nervous system is controlling the liver and the pancreas, which are the digestive enzymes. Yep, exactly. The health of the lining of the GI tract, the mucus production of the GI tract, the pH, what controls that? The nervous system. How we draw nutrients and water out of the bowels to reuse them again in the body, what controls that? The nervous system. So every step of the way, the nervous system is controlling all of this. And we literally have these three nervous systems, the sensory nerve that feels things, and then the parasympathetic and the sympathetic that control the autonomic function. So it's all intrinsically connected. And so as food moves along in this process, we can end up with tonal issues. Chronic subluxations cause chronic stress hormones, which then slows down the GI tract and interrupts the normal flow. And so that's what then creates these chronic digestive problems for many reasons. So when we check the spine, we're typically finding that constipation is associated with certain subluxation patterns. And so more often than not, it's can be emotional or psychological stress. So let's actually look at that. So when we look at chronic constipation, these are the parts of the nervous system where we find the most common subluxation patterns. C1 to C3, very common, because that's again where that parasympathetic can be affecting the large intestine. And then also we have L5 to S3, that's the bottom of it here, and that can affect the large intestine. But then we also have L1 and 2, because that's the sympathetic innervation to the large intestine. And we call this neurological because it's all about the tone. So the vagus nerve from the very top, oftentimes with children, this is the most common one, C1 to C3, when children are constipated. That is the most common, upper cervical. And that subluxation, the C1 to C3, the very first time that gets subluxated may be from the birth process. So if there's twisting or torquing or compression on the head as it's coming through the birth canal or stretching, that's oftentimes why babies have digestive problems, is the vagus nerve being affected from the delivery process. And then there's also a lot of tug on the shoulders, and it puts pressure on that whole upper cervical spine. And that will then change the tone of the GI tract. And then we have the L1 to 2, and then the L5 to the bowels. So constipation, it's a neurological issue. Now, if you know somebody that struggles with constipation, I would love to just have a conversation with them, because it's not something that people like to talk about. So if I think all of you that are on the call right now are all in the practice, but if anybody that's watching this recording, because you can share this with other people as well, if you're sharing with others, anybody that's watching this, if you want to just talk it down with me, what your concerns are, then please do. Just send us a text that says gut talk. And that way my team will know that it is, that's how you heard about us. Send us a text that says gut talk. And that's our number there, 802-985-9850. And then we can just set up a time to talk things through, to just see what's going on with you. No charge. I'll give you 10 minutes of my time just to see if I think it's something that I could help with. So feel free to share that. Now let's go to the next one. Irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, celiac. So this is where there's an inflamed GI tract all the way through. And, the GI tract really is a very sophisticated hose that has two openings at each end. So the mouth, where things go in, and the butt, where things come out, right? So it's just a sophisticated hose. And so just recognize that when you put food into your mouth, you chew it up, you swallow it, and as it goes through that hose, it's not actually inside you until it's broken down and absorbed or metabolized into your body. So we've often heard this, you are what you eat, right? I know you're all saying that, you are what you eat, but actually that's not true. You are what you metabolize and absorb. That's what you are. So if it doesn't get into your body into the bloodstream and just goes all the way through, it never got inside of you. So that's important. So what determines what comes in and out of you is the walls of the GI tract. And so I'm going to just go into a little bit more detail here with this. So the gut wall has lots of mountains and valleys in it, because that's how we get a big surface area. And so you have all these villi that are, this is the inside of the digestive system that we're looking at, what we call the lumen. The lumen is the inside lining of the digestive tract. And so this is as if we're looking at the inside of that hose that's going down through your body. The health of the inside wall is what's happening with the IBS situation. It's all about the gut wall here. And so the gut wall is the barrier from the inside of your body that protects things from getting into the bloodstream, and also protects things from going outside of your body through the bloodstream, through the gut wall. So the tight junctions and permeability are the key thing here. If you have loose junctions, you're going to have something called leaky gut. And I'm going to show you this in a moment. And that actually will affect an immune response in your body. And then we get this inflammation in the whole lining of the gut. So when you zoom in on the GI tract, you'll see it's not just smooth, it's hills and valleys. has a curvy pattern to it, which increases the surface area. And that makes more room for your body to interact and pull out the nutrients and exchange water. So, and then if you zoom in even more, you're going to see these little fingerlings here. And the fingerlings, again, just add even more surface area. And they go right out, they kind of reach out into the space so they can get after the food and exchange nutrients and water. And this tissue is highly sensitive because it's going to determine not just what goes in and out, but who you are and what you are, because it'll determine which foods and which nutrients you're going to absorb. And so the nervous system is what's in charge of maintaining the health of the lining of your gut. So let's ask the question, what was this designed for, right? Our gut was designed this way, more than 40,000 years ago is when this design came into play. And so we need to look at our ancestral diets and compare them to our current diets so we can understand what was this designed for, and are we living incongruently with what it was designed for. So when we look at the foods that are the biggest culprit here, it's all about the grains. The grains are not good for you. Big shock, I know. Whole grains, they're still not good for us. And basically, if we look at the food pyramid that we're taught, we're supposed to have 17 servings of grains per day. So you can see why a lot of people in our culture don't know why they're struggling with digestive problems, but they are. And so I want you to just look at this closely here, because here's the long and short of it. Grains are seeds. And if you think of what our ancestors would have eaten, they were not eating grains. What they would do is, they wouldn't grind up the little seeds and then make a flour with them and then cook it. They wouldn't do that. What they would do, the way that they got grains into their diet, is they ate the animals that ate the grains that actually had the digestive systems that could metabolize it. So they would eat the rabbit that ate the grains and grasses and seeds. So they would eat meat and greens, not grains. They would eat the animals that ate the grains and grasses. That's how they would get in. They would eat fruit of trees, sometimes the leaves, but not the seeds. So we eat the fruits and vegetables, and then the tree itself, leaves maybe, but the seeds that make the tree, what is that job of a seed? Let's talk this through. A seed is going to fall on the ground, and then it's going to die and go into the soil and break apart. And it's going to break down into a very hostile environment. And it's going to try and then grow a new life into a tree from that. And then that tree will then grow more fruit that will produce more seeds and so on. But that seed is covered with anti-nutrients because, and the anti-nutrients are gluten, gliadin, phytic acid. These are anti-nutrients. These are toxicant elements that exist in seeds and grains. And they're there to protect that seed in the soil so it doesn't get fungus on it. And so other things don't come and eat it that can kill it, right? And that is then going to allow it to grow into the plant. So these toxicants actually irritate the very sensitive gut lining wall so that we end up with irritation that can be called leaky gut syndrome. And so these are the sources of these toxicants that are coming in. It's from the grains and the seeds. Now, if you look at more recent ancient cultures, like from 3000 BC up to a few hundred years ago, they didn't have any evidence of chronic illness, but they still would never have consumed grains the way that we consume them today. They always would have taken the hint by looking at what is nature doing, and they would have always either soaked, sprouted, or fermented those grains, which is essentially neutralizing those anti-nutrients. That's what makes them fit for human consumption. However, the grains would also have been part of an entire complex diet style of daily fermented foods, very few sweeteners, no processed foods, and that would have never have included the modern hybridized grains that we have today, never mind the GMO versions of those grains, and never mind the added ubiquitous use of herbicides and pesticides that we use today, like Roundup, glyphosate, otherwise known as. And that works in pests by destroying their gut function. So the trouble with grains is that they are acidic And if they're acidic, we know that chronic illness loves acidic environments to fester in. They have low nutrient density, meaning that we have to go through a lot to metabolize them and get very little nutrient out of them. They are high in omega-6 fatty acids, which causes an imbalance and drives inflammation in our body. They have a high glycemic index, which affects the blood sugar, and then that's not going to be good for us. And then they have these toxic and irritant properties. And all of this can then lead to leaky gut syndrome. So let's take a look at that. Now, this is looking at the lining of the gut. So right here, this part above the picture, this is as though this is the inside of your gut. So you just swallowed food, and that food is running down through this tube here, and this is the lining of the tube. So this right here is the gut lining, and these are the cells of the gut lining. And then right here, this is the bloodstream. So these are the red blood cells. And so in order to get the nutrition into our body, we have to digest things in the gut so that they're small enough that the lumen here is going to choose which nutrients it's going to let into the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream is going to carry those nutrients wherever it needs in the body. Now, when we look here at what's happening, sorry, I just want to change something around here so I can, here we go. All right. When we see this right-hand side that has inflammation, if this lumen, this gut lining gets inflamed, it can no longer do the job of being a gatekeeper, guarding what's getting into the bloodstream, and things get leaky when it gets inflamed, and then all kinds of things can go in. So you could have food that's not fully broken down yet sneaking right into the bloodstream, and the blood, when it gets into the bloodstream, you have white blood cells that are going to look at that and saying, what is that doing here? We need an amino acid. We don't want a protein in here. We need the broken down parts of that protein, which is amino acids. Then we can use them. We can use those building blocks, but we can't use it if it's not broken down. And so it's going to set up an immune response to that. That's called a food allergen when that happens. We also might have pathogens that get in, microorganisms that are supposed to stay out, that they might also get in, and that's going to be troublesome. So it's kind of like bricks with mortar in between them. And these are the tight junctions that we want to maintain to keep things outside of the body, meaning inside the digestive canal, until they're ready for us to either metabolize or that we just want to get rid of, that we're not going to use. The tight junctions are there to stop food from getting into the body before it's digested. So once it's digested, then the tight junctions will allow it to come through. That's a healthy response. Undigested proteins can irritate the immune system and set up swelling, inflammation, and mucus. So, this is just a basic baseline understanding of this, but I want you to have walking around knowledge of this. And so remember that the gut lining is irritated. That's the key thing that's happening here. Now, if you have subluxations that cause nerve interference, that cause weaknesses in the GI tract, and then you start putting foods in there that aren't supposed to be there, which causes irritation, and then the body can't heal it, then you end up with that leaky gut syndrome. And so when you get leaky gut, we're going to also start to see leaky brain, leaky kidneys, leaky blood vessels. And so those all tend to tie together. So the trouble with all of this in the modern world also is, let's just make sure we cover this idea of glyphosate. So this is what's in Roundup, and this is what's being sprayed on crops. So glyphosate completes this perfect storm. So the first part is the DNA. So, some people that struggle with celiac, for example, they talk about it as a genetic concern, but there are people that they don't get the celiac until, they're already a few decades into life, and then it starts to show up. And so there can be the potential for that, but then there's an epigenetic factor. There's something that triggers that DNA that was dormant to then upregulate, and now it's expressing this disease situation. And so the epigenetics, the thing that causes the DNA to trigger is a stressor, whether it's a physical, chemical, emotional, or all three of those stressors. And then the third component is the microbiome, which is, the bacteria in the gut, and not just the bacteria, but it's all the microorganisms that are in the gut. So glyphosate is sprayed on Roundup, and it is something that, let's just unpack this a little bit. So glyphosate is something that is used to destroy the pests that go after, corn and crops. And so they genetically modify the crop so it doesn't get killed by the glyphosate, but then the glyphosate kills everything else around it. And it also kills the microorganisms in the soil that we need to have healthy soil for the plants to grow in. And they carry that healthiness up into the plant, and then we eat the plant and so on. So whatever the plant is, if we're going to eat it, if it's got glyphosate on it, it's destroying not only the nutrients in the soil, but it's also, one of the ways that it works is the little insects that try to go and eat that corn, right? When they eat the glyphosate, it destroys their digestive system. So if then that glyphosate is on the food and we eat it, it affects our digestive system as well. The other thing that happens is that the glyphosate causes more and more of the tight junctions to become leaky. And glyphosate also makes both mercury and aluminum more toxic. And so this is a real problem because these are neurotoxins, mercury and aluminum, that come from many different sources. One source is vaccines. Another source could be the foods that we're eating. Another source could be actually water having it in it. So there's lots of different ways that it can come in. And glyphosate just makes the body, makes it more toxic because it makes it easier to get into the body. So we're all very unique. And when we think of our DNA, I've studied this a lot in advanced genetics courses. And what shines through over and over again is this idea that we all are unique. And yet still 99.6% of us have the perfect genome to express perfect health as long as we have the right environment over time. So if we do have any of these factors that are disease linked genes, they can be downregulated and not express. It's the stresses that cause them to upregulate and start to express into disease function. So, there are nuances and variants that make folks different. And some of them are going to be more vulnerable to certain stressors in our environment. And so if we can reconcile that, that's when we can actually optimize gene function. But we have altered our environment so much that many of these genes that would have been dormant in a healthy environment are woken and turned on in an unhealthy environment. And then we add the 3 dimensions of stresses. We destroy the gut lining with the grains and glyphosate. And now we're in trouble where everything's going sideways. But help is available. So glyphosate is just everywhere. It's being found now because it travels in the rain and it rains on even the organic crops. So we want to choose to eat the local food that's organically grown because it's going to have the least likelihood of having glyphosate. But there is actually a product that helps to protect against glyphosate damage and also to heal the damage of a leaky gut. And the product is called Ion Gut Health. And it's gone through some different iterations. It used to be called Restore. But basically, the idea is that the human microbiome is made up of not just bacteria, but also fungi and parasites and yeasts and viruses. And there's certain versions of those that are healthy and certain versions that are unhealthy. So just taking a probiotic that has, 7 strains of a particular healthy bacteria, please don't substitute that for the diversity that we really want for a healthy gut. And the more diverse our microbiome is in our gut, the healthier that it is. So what Ion does as a product is it actually helps to repair the leaky gut, the leaky tight junctions. And they found that it actually not only does it repair those, but it also helps to protect against glyphosate damage. So if you take it before you eat things, then you can protect from that. It used to be called Restore. You might recognize it. It was called Restore when it first came out onto the market. The nickname for it at that point was healthy dirt water because it comes from the soils that have not been disturbed from the glyphosate, that have all those communication substances in them that make that the tight junctions healthy again. So remember that the gut lining, 80% of the immune system lives in the gut lining. So if we do not have a healthy gut lining, it's going to affect our immune system as well. And so what do we need to do here? If you have an unhealthy gut, especially in this category of the irritable bowel, the IBS, the that whole category, the Crohn's disease, the celiac, the IBD, all of those things, what do we do about it? Well, it's a process, and it starts with weeding and seeding the microbiome. So we want to weed out the unhealthy microbiome, the ones that are what we call the bad bugs that get out of control, and they overpopulate and they overrun the healthy gut flora. So we want to weed that. The product that I use for that is called Gut Flora Complex. And I also might use myrrh at times that can kill off the bad guys, so weed the gut. Gut Flora Complex is made of andrographis, berberine, oregano, and anise. And berberine, sometimes I'll recommend berberine even just on its own for certain people. So I'm going to test people to make sure I get the right combinations. But for weeding the gut, those are some of the herbs that are going to be most effective. Then we need to seed the gut. So we want to plant seeds of the healthy versions. So healthy probiotics are the way to seed the gut. And I do love ProSymbiotic as one of the ones that does that. But also we want to continue to use different types of what we call probiotic foods. So things like kombucha and yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut and kimchi and miso. So these are all the fermented foods that have a lot of diversity of flora, that when you eat them, it helps to make more diversity in the gut. Once we have weeded and seeded the gut, now we want to feed the new seeds, and we want to make sure we're feeding the foods that the healthy gut biome, the healthy flora like. So that can be a problem where people they'll take a probiotic, but then they keep feeding what the bad bugs like. And so they just keep proliferating. So the things that feed the healthy gut flora are going to be things like fiber, rosemary, green tea, grapeseed, turmeric. And so we have products that contain that in it. The things that people do that are a mistake is they eat a lot of sugar and grains, and those feed the bad bugs. And so then they can just make things persist. Then we also want to look at healing the lining of the gut and sealing it. So there are certain nutrients like licorice, chamomile, and meadowsweet that really help to heal the gut. They're very soothing. Aloe vera, okra. These are the things that are very soothing to heal up an inflamed and irritated gut. And then sealing the gut, we're going to use that product Ion that I mentioned, and also fiber is going to be important for sealing the gut. I want to just double click on this idea of the genes. So for some people that have digestive concerns, I get some great results if I can go all the way upstream and do this genetically based nutrition with them. And so the way that works is we actually do a genetic test so we can see what are the variants that person has that may potentially be affecting their digestive system. And then we know exactly what the nutrients would be that would help to reconcile those variables or those variants that they have, those genetic variants. And there are certain jobs that different genes have throughout the whole digestive system cycle. And so if you have one of those variants that has upregulated, that is causing havoc and causing dysfunction, we oftentimes can now supply the proper nutrient that's going to reconcile that. So we first do a genetically based test, and then we get a series of reports that show us exactly what those variants are. And then we do a one-on-one testing so we can see which of those variants are actually upregulated and causing problems, and which of them are still just dormant and actually not causing a problem. And then we come up with what would be a genetically optimal multivitamin, essentially, is what we're coming up with. So if you look at a multivitamin, you look at the label, it's got 20 different things on it. Even if it's a really good quality multivitamin, everybody that takes it is getting the exact same things in the exact same amounts. And yet we're all unique. And so we all need unique nutrition as well. And so we can do this genetically based nutrition so that we can dial that in and then take all the different components of a multivitamin, separate them out, and give you the exact amounts that you need so we can optimize your genetics. So if you want to know more about that, just ask me when you come into the clinic next time. So there are things you're going to want to start doing, things you're going to want to stop doing. And so the healthy diet style, again, this comes from a formula from 40,000 years of genetic demands. So we want to make sure that we have remember this left-hand side, the things we want to be eating. We do want to eat the non-starchy vegetables, some fruit, meat, poultry, fish, especially from healthy sources. So grass-fed, pastured, free-range, wild-caught, range-fed eggs, free-range eggs, natural fats, not the synthetic fats that are the corn oil, the soybean oil, the canola oil, those are not healthy fats. So the natural fats that come from butter, coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil, those sorts of things. And then some nuts and seeds, again, best to soak them, sprout them, ferment them before you eat them. And then drinking water, like that is what our genes were designed for. But if we look on the other side here, things you want to stop doing, slow down and stop, the refined carbohydrates, right? The pastries, the breads, the pastas, the cereal grains that people are eating, the sweeteners, the cane sugar and the high fructose corn syrup, the bad vegetable oils, excuse me. So pretty much the exceptions for vegetable oils that are good are olive oil, avocado oil, palm oil, and coconut oils. Legumes have that same phytic acid in it that's going to be the anti-nutrient. And if you are going to eat them again, you definitely need to soak them in order to get the nutrients out and to protect yourself from the anti-nutrients. Dairy products, a lot of people have trouble with dairy products, and especially nowadays, they're from these hybridized animals that are fed antibiotics to help them produce more. They are, not in a healthy situation, so that they have antibiotics for infections and things like that. But also then that product is pasteurized and homogenized, so it just really destroys the proteins in it and makes it unhealthy for us. If you're going to do dairy, you want to look at raw dairy that has come from healthy grass-fed animals, whether it's cows or goats or sheep. And you can even get raw dairy cheeses as well. So those are going to be much healthier, much easier for you to digest. And I do also appreciate the A2 gene cows that are the simplest. They're kind of the heirloom variety of cows. They have the simplest DNA structure, so it's the easiest for our bodies to recognize if we are going to eat the dairy. And then you want to stop the soda, the juice, the alcohol. Again, our bodies were not designed for that if we go back 40,000 years and look at what they were designed for. I would like to give you a gift this evening to thank you for coming on to our call, our webinar. This is a cookbook that I love, and there's a digital version that you can download for free. And it's from Standard Process. It's called 1 Degree of Change. And if you just do a search, let's see if I have it in here. Yeah, this is where you can find it. If you go to mystandardprocess.com and then you just go through the literature, you're going to find the cookbook, the Purification Cookbook. So feel free to download that. The recipes are delicious and easy, and they're all going to be falling into the healthy version of foods that you can be eating if you need to be inspired. All right. Now let's look at where are the subluxation patterns for irritable bowel syndrome, Crohn's disease, and celiac. So again, we're going to see that upper cervical as a key area, right? Vagus nerve, but then also this area through here, T7 to T11 is key. And this is the nerve supply to the small intestines. And so remember that these subluxation patterns, they can actually have a compound effect and interfere with healing and repair. So if we have disturbance and irritation in the gut lining and we're not able to repair it, that just is cumulative over time as well. So C1 is the vagus nerve, right? That's important for the tone and healing factor. But then the mid-gut nerve supply is that T7 to T11. And what we see with the upper cervical and the vagus nerve, it's the tone of the bowel, and especially folks that struggle with diverticulosis. So that's where the lining of the gut loses its tone, so it makes a pocket. And then that pocket is a place where things can get stuck and accumulate and get irritated. So when we see folks that struggle with diverticulosis or diverticulitis, which is where it's actually inflamed, oftentimes we're going to see that the vagus nerve being responsible. And then, we think of the subluxations in this area as chemically based, where chemical stresses are the dominant thing, which the subluxations will affect the tone motility and the tolerance and the health of the gut. But then what we put inside the body also creates more irritation of that gut lining. So again, not an exhaustive discussion of this, but just walk around knowledge so that you know what you should and should not be eating. And again, if you struggle with any of these, irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, celiac, if you know somebody that does, again, feel free to have them just text us, and I'm happy to see if I can help. So this is so interesting just to look at the subluxation patterns. Literally, we see a healthy spine here has a good, beautiful forward curve here, forward curve. But someone that's struggling with Crohn's disease, we see that they actually have lost that normal healthy curve. There's somebody else that has lost that curve with Crohn's disease. Here's someone else with a reversal of the curve with Crohn's disease. So really, what's happening in the spine does affect the tone in the body. And so if we look at now at acid reflux and heartburn, going to the next, we're going up the digestive system. And right now we're looking at the stomach. So the stomach is all about sphincters. Sphincters are the valves that separate the stomach from the esophagus and separate the stomach from the small intestines. And the sphincters are really like a trap door. It's like a one-way street. And what it does is it protects the esophagus from the stomach acids. The stomach lining is a very, very unique lining because these cells can withstand a lot of acid without being destroyed. So when food comes into the stomach, it mixes with acids in order to break it down. And we do not want those acids to get up into the esophagus because the lining of the esophagus doesn't have that special tissue that can tolerate the acids. And so there's a muscle that closes that prevents this acid reflux from occurring. And if acid reflux is back up into the unprotected esophagus, it's going to irritate it. So, I mean, some people think they're having a heart attack when they have this. It's so painful, and the spasming that can occur when that esophagus gets irritated from the gut acids. And, modern life, we see so many reasons for having this stress that pushes this. Chronic social stress, and then choking down foods and eating crappy foods, and then having sedentary sitting all the time. That actually creates the thoracic problems that we see with this. So the sphincter at the bottom is what lets the food out once it's digested. And if this sphincter is not working properly, then you get undigested food that's going down into the small intestines as well. So as far as acidity goes, the stomach likes to be at about 4.3 pH. The esophagus likes to be 7.4 pH. So it does not like that acidicness of the stomach. But the esophageal sphincter is what separates these two environments. And so the food comes down, the door opens, and then the food drops into the stomach. And then that sphincter should slap shut there to keep the acidic juices of the stomach in the stomach, where the stomach is going to churn that food around in an acidic soup to break down the proteins and the fats so we can digest them before they go out the bottom, which is the pyloric sphincter, into the small intestine for further digestion and then absorbing the nutrients and the water further downstream. So with reflux, as the stomach churns the food, the reflux is an acidic bolus can actually go back up into the basic environment of the esophagus and irritate that sphincter and the esophagus. So this is also a tonal issue where this one-way valve loses tone, so it can't keep the food in the stomach. And so in the spine, we tend to see that right here, and that T4, T6 area. Now, this does tend to be a physical thing. And so, yes, car accidents and sports traumas can cause or start this problem, but what we find is that the computer slouching posture, that forward head carriage, is the primary cause of this. And so this T4, T6, it affects the tone of the valve, so the valve is not working right. And then if you add to that hunched posture, that's when you're going to, and the forward weight bearing, that's when you're going to be creating, and then you keep reproducing this upper thoracic subluxation. So again, if you struggle with these kinds of things, make sure you message me through Facebook or just call or text me, and we're happy to help. Just put gut talk into the text and we'll know to reach out and schedule a time for us to talk. Let's just look a little bit more at this idea of the micro traumas that keep pushing this trouble with GERD. And it's a postural thing. And you can see it affects all ages here, right? And all ages are affected by that hunching that is happening. And again, remember that tech neck is something that is a new phenomenon last, 10 years or so that we're seeing more and more of. And it's that not only tech neck, not only affects the neck, but it also affects the upper thoracic subluxation patterns. And indigestion is some of the most common side effects we see of tech neck. And, I know gals, they hate hearing about this idea of this kyphosis or this humpback that happens, but it's literally related to this as well. So most unhealthy positions will affect the viscera. It's not as easy to breathe, the lungs, the heart, all of that when you're hunched over. And so that's what the modern person is turning into, is this poor posture that we're seeing. And remember, it is cumulative. So when we're measuring the effects of stress, how do we tell if the body is processing stress properly or not? We have to measure it. It's the only way. And when we see abnormal HRV that shows the nervous system is unable to process the current stress load, we know that's going to affect digestion. And without positive change, it's going to cause aging before your time. The thermography is what shows us the inflammation and the nerve interference to the organs. And so this is the link between how stress affects people differently and how your stress can cause subluxations to certain levels, which innervate certain organs, including the digestive organs. So what are the other ways that we manage it? The instrumentation is part of that, but we also do motion palpation to feel the motion in the individual joints. We use static palpation to see, is that vertebra misaligned a certain way at a certain level? And visualization is another thing we use, which is posture. So using a posture analysis can actually tell us a lot. And then we can go inside and do an x-ray to look at the inside. But I have a challenge for you. Now that we are coming into Thanksgiving, and in a few days, we're going to be gathered. Hopefully, you will be gathered with family and friends. I want you to just be a detective and watch the posture of the people that you're surrounded with. And these are your loved ones. And do they have that telltale hunched posture that's going to get them into trouble with their digestive system? If you see that, you definitely want to, help them to recognize that this is going to be a problem over time. And so I want you to just think about that as a way that you can help folks. And I also want to encourage you when you're together to kind of slow down when you're eating. And a lot of times I wanted to mention one other thing with the reflux, with the GERD. It's important that you do start to digest that food as early as possible so it takes some of the burden off of the stomach. So you want to be using mastication, chewing your food properly as a very important part of having healthy digestion. And the way I want you to think about this is I want you to chew the solid food so well that when you swallow it, it's a liquid. And liquids that you drink, instead of just drinking and guzzling them right down, I want you to let those liquids spend some time in your mouth so that the salivary glands and the salivary enzymes can kind of get in there and then when you swallow it. So I want you to think of this as a way to remember it. I want you to chew your liquids, and I want you to drink your solids. Chew your liquids and drink your solids. The only way you're going to drink your solids is if you chew them enough that they're liquid when you swallow them. And then when you put the liquids in your mouth, chew them around, get them before you swallow them, okay? That's going to actually help your whole digestive system, but especially if you struggle with the GERD. So watch everybody at the Thanksgiving table and see, are they just wolfing that food down, or are they taking the time to really enjoy the flavor and let it spend some time in the mouth before we swallow it and it hits the stomach and we go on from there. All right, so so I just want to let folks know too that we do have specials. So if there's somebody that you know that you want to refer in to get checked, if they do have digestive concerns, and find out whether they do have any subluxations that are the cause of that, then of course we would love to check them. And the usual cost of our new patient exam, as you may know, is $210. But for people that you're referring in, we have a certain number of openings that we're capping it at 47. And so feel free to do that. Also, we have a special running right now that you may want to take advantage of, which is if you bring in some groceries for our food drive, then we'll also give you a certificate that's the equivalent of that 47. And so you can pass that on to somebody else that needs to get checked. All right, so the 3 steps for correcting the cause of the problem is breaking the bad habits, adding in specific exercises to get the spine stronger, and then chiropractic adjustments in a rhythm to correct the subluxations that are interfering with the nerve supply, the trouble with the nerve supply. So remember, we were talking about different dangerous beliefs. Well, one dangerous belief is that, oh, there's nothing that can be done. And I promise you, if you haven't had your nervous system checked yet by a chiropractor, then you haven't actually explored everything. And if you are under chiropractic care, then you want to make sure that you're breaking the bad habits and doing those other pieces so that you can really get the results that you want. Again, thank you so much for your time and attention today. Remember to chew your liquids, drink your solids, and enjoy your family time. Make some really good decisions with your foods this holiday season so that you can finish the year strong. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I am going to now stop the recording and hang on. There it is.